Welcome to See You Next Tuesday. I'm Jade Chung. One of the best feelings in the world is finding yourself in a magazine. It makes you say to yourself, wow, like I'm doing it. I made it. Like I'm doing this wrestling thing and I'm in a magazine, and not just any magazine, but the Pro Wrestling Illustrated PWI magazine. I am so thankful and grateful that I've had a couple spreads in there, and it's all thanks to my friend Dan Murphy. Very, very, very early in my career, probably the first year, or maybe even the first 6 months of my career, Dan had reached out and asked me if he could do his 10 questions with. Teenage me, I was in my head, I was jumping and screaming, and of course I was so excited, right? Like an editor, a writer just contacted me to do a little tidbit on me. So I was over the moon happy. And then another article was when I hosted the Ring of Honor after party at my sports bar, the Champions Den, when they were here in Toronto. And that was back in 2009. And I think I would see like just pictures here and there. I don't know if there was any articles written. I wish I paid more attention during my time in Ring of Honor. Like I'm sure there was like pictures from the whole embassy. I wish I paid attention just so I could have all of that memorabilia. But I have the 2 magazines that I was in, and that makes me so happy. I'm so excited to bring on the man behind all of the amazing PWI articles and PWI rankings. Everyone, please welcome my good friend, Dan Murphy. Dan, how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you very much for having me. This is very cool. Congratulations on this new podcast venture. It's awesome.
Thank you. I was just, we were just talking a little bit earlier and just saying how nervous I am because this was like your position. You're the interviewer. You're the person who does this. And so I'm nervous because now I feel like there's so much pressure.
Yeah, you should be, because I'm going to second guess everything you do.
No, don't do that.
100%. Totally. Yeah. You're off to a bad start anyway, but go ahead.
Oh, I hate you. Just kidding. Can never. Well, let's go back to the very first time that we met.
Okay.
Do you actually remember?
I do. Absolutely. I was surprised that you did. So I was waiting to see if you did, but it was the Night of Appreciation for Sabu show in Michigan, in Belleville, Michigan, maybe.
Yes. For the Diamondback.
Yeah.
Diamondback. Wow. I didn't realize it was the appreciation night for Sabu.
Yeah.
But I remember talking to you by the wall, and you paid me my very first compliment. So that's something that I have never forgotten.
Is that true? Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Managing was like, everything for me. So for someone like yourself, especially coming to me and, just giving me a compliment, like I was just... I was in heaven.
I'm glad. Now, do you remember what I said?
Oh, I can't remember word for word.
Because I kind of do. I mean, not
you?
Necessarily word for word, but I remember the thought I had, and even thinking like, if possible, I want to make sure I say hello to you before I left. And it was because you were managing A1, I think. I don't know who he was working, but it was maybe the first or second match on the show. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a so-so match. A1, he was a heck of an athlete, but not the most charismatic guy at that stage of his career. Mm-hmm. But you had this persona and this presence outside the ring that I thought was just incredible, because you just had the crowd, and you were involved in the match. You paid the right amount of attention to the crowd to keep them invested, but never made yourself the focus. You kind of kept the focus on the ring. And of the four people in the match, the two guys and the referee and you, I believe, you were the one that added the most, I thought, just because of your presence. And I wanted to kind of say that. And then to find out that you were still so new into the business at that point, I just thought, wow, this is a real natural. She's got a real head for the business, a real talent. So I'm glad that I was able to stop you at that show and let you know that.
Oh my God, like even now, I feel like a dork, but like I have the biggest smile just hearing that. Like, Dan, thank you so much. That you have no idea how much that means to me. And although I didn't remember it word for word, just listening to it now, it just it has like a bigger meaning to it, like it did before. But like now, because I still love wrestling so much, and I'm not doing any of it right now, but obviously I miss managing. I miss doing that. I miss being out there with like a crazy personality. So it truly, truly means a lot that you saw that in me. So thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, no problem. I mean,
I'm blushing.
I'll stop it. See, that's the way you start off the interview. You get the interviewer feeling good, and now it's all downhill from here. See, that's a little trick of the trade.
Okay, let's talk Pro Wrestling Illustrated.
Yes.
How long were you with them for?
I was with PWI for 22 years, from 97. I got a job. Well, I got my first freelance article shortly after college, and it became an ongoing thing, and I just kept writing for them. And over time, it went from just doing an article or two to doing. In the beginning, we had Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Sports Review Wrestling was still around, I think, Inside Wrestling, and The Wrestler, and we would occasionally have like these specials. And I was doing like 4 or 5 articles for each of those magazines every month. So I was just doing a ton of stuff. And then it got to the point where I became a senior writer. They kind of gave me a little bit of a position, and then took over eventually doing the PWI 500 and the Female 50, which became the Women's 100. And it just kind of gradually, I took on more and more responsibility with the magazine. But it just came from me contacting the magazine right out of college. I wanted to do a story. UFC was going to run an event up in New York State. And at the time, eventually they banned it. It was banned for years until a few years ago. And what they wanted to do was the legislature wanted to make all the fighters wear gloves and get rid of certain strikes and things. And there was a crossover with some pro wrestlers doing UFC. So I called PWI, said, I know that you don't normally cover UFC, but this is kind of unique. I can get photos. Would you be interested in a story? And then the event got canceled, or actually moved to Alabama. So I had to call back and be like, there goes my opportunity.
Damn, yeah.
But then the publisher says, it sounds like your stuff. How about you send me some clips? And then I was kind of off and running.
Wow. Yeah. That's cool. And so like, so with the PWI 500, did you come up with the PWI Women's 50?
Yeah, that was my idea.
Wow.
I'd pitched it for a little while. And at first, Stu Sachs, the publisher, was kind of resistant because he didn't think that there were 50 quality women in the U.S. And the idea was we wanted to kind of limit it for the U.S. in the beginning. It's funny because the Female 50, Women's 100 has been around for 10 or 11 years now. And if you go back 10 or 11 years, WWE was still doing the Divas division with 3-minute matches and more bikini contests than anything else. The Knockouts were doing great stuff in TNA. But the world, like Stardom, didn't exist in Japan. No one was really following it. A lot of Japanese and Joshi wrestling wasn't on the radar for the average American fan. So the idea of coming up with, if you're doing the Female 50, you'd have somebody like Kelly, like number 30. And then there were still 20 other spots to fill, not to take a shot at Kelly, but she wasn't Luthez, but I kind of kept fighting for it, especially when Shimmer came on the scene and pointed out to Stu Sachs, like, look, there are this many women on the American Independents. It's just that they're not on national TV. And he eventually relented, and we did it. The first issue, he thought, if it sells well, we'll make this an annual thing. And it didn't sell well at all. Like, it bombed. It was like the audience wasn't ready for women's wrestling, not as a cover story of the magazine or whatever. But Stu decided to try it again the next year, and it gradually picked up, and it became what it is today. So
wow,
he showed some faith in it, and even though the initial sales were weak, it definitely got better.
Do you know if it's still like the 50?
No, a couple of years ago we bumped it up to the women's 100. And again, I did all of the ranking on that and all the research, and a lot of times contacting all the different women to try to, because we need to run a photo with everybody. Right. It's not possible for the 500, but if we're doing 100 women, I thought, that because there's something, the women, it's not just their look, but each woman has, their colors and their look and their gimmick. And it's not just, it can be so vital to who they are. And I thought that, if we're going to do 100, we ought to find a way to lay it all out where we have photos for everybody. Obviously, you can't do that with a 500, but with 100, we did. But it's tough because you have to track down the photos and you have to make sure that they're, inevitably we'd run a photo and one of the girls would get back to me and be like, oh, that's my old gear. I wish we'd use this. I wish, oh, come on, But, so it was always tough, but it always made me so happy once that issue came out. Because it was kind of my baby, so when it came out and I flipped through it and it would be like, okay, we did it another year. It's still there. So.
All right. So like, be real. Okay.
Yeah.
Cause it's me you're talking to. How much crap would you get from people, fans, wrestlers, just about rankings alone? Like, would you get like a crap ton of emails about this?
No, not a crap ton. But it's weird. So you'd always get like on Reddit and everything, you'd have fans be like, oh, these guys don't know what they're doing. And then they list like their opinion of what the top 20 should be or what, like, well, that's ridiculous. This guy's an idiot, and what we always try to, and no one's ever going to agree completely, but we try to explain with each issue, and because there's like a 500 word opening before we get to the rankings of like how we put together the rankings. And the rankings are based on their accomplishments over the previous 12 months. It's how many titles they've won, their success in their main company, kind of where their push is. So we're not looking to give the award to the best worker. I mean, the best worker could be somebody who's doing opening matches because that's where they're slotted in their company, right? I mean, it's wrestling. It's, that's how it is. We look at the person who's kind of had the most impact in their company over the past 12 months. So I remember the one year for the PWI 500, and I remember this. That year, I drove down to Philadelphia for the editorial meeting because I was based in my home of Buffalo. And once a year, I would go down, or twice a year, and visit with Stu and some of the staff. And we'd have an editorial meeting to start the 500. And the whole drive down, I was thinking, somebody's got to talk me out of this, but I think Miz is going to be number one in the 500. And it was that year that Miz went into WrestleMania as the WWE champion, and he won. And he was on NXT and SmackDown and Raw and had all. It's like nobody over the past 12 months had a better year. And he's not the best wrestler, but like that's the criteria. So yeah, I'd get blowback. I'd get some people on Reddit, but what really bugged me, there were a couple times when it was wrestlers who would be like, I don't pay attention to it because it's all at work. And number one, those are the same wrestlers who are emailing me like, hey, Dan, how do I get into the 500? What do I have to send? Whatever. And it's okay, dude, like, I know that it's just some writer's subjective list or whatever, but I spent 3 months of the year doing this and compiling it. And then like these guys kind of crap on it and whatever, especially when I know that they are like trying to get in it and trying to, and the other thing is the idea of calling it a work always drove me nuts because wrestling's a work. Wrestling itself isn't real. Everybody plays a role. Everybody does this. And we're putting over the guys who play roles. We're working side by side, So you know, it's like an actor saying, "Oh, the Academy Awards are all the work." Well, so are movies. Come on. Yes, so that would always irritate me. But I didn't get as much flack as you might think. I remember after the 1 year of I think the second year of the Female 50, I was backstage at Shimmer, and Awesome Kong came up to me, and I had never met her up until that point.
Mhm.
And she came over and says, doing her Awesome Kong gimmick, basically. She's like, "So I hear that you ranked me number 4 in this year's PWI Female 50, or whatever number it was." Like, yeah, that's where I did. And all of a sudden, a big smile came out of her face. She goes, "Oh my God, I'm so happy. Thank you." And she gave me a big hug. Like, she totally broke character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like some people, I don't know. It is what it is. No, I didn't get as many complaints as you would think, but a lot of kind of like backhanded comments and a lot of stuff on Reddit.
Yeah. So now, do you know who took over for the PWI 500 and stuff?
Yeah. Well, I contacted Stu Sachs and told him I wanted to kind of retire from PWI.
Hmm.
I felt like I'd been there long enough, and I just don't really like what wrestling has kind of become. And I just thought it was time for me, to try something else. And Stu says, "Oh man, your timing like couldn't be worse." Like, why? He goes, "Because I'm going to retire too." And I was kind of thinking like you might, take over for me and
Oh,
whatever.
wow.
Yeah. And I saw it through until the end of the 2019, I think, female or women's 100. And that
Hmm.
was my last issue. And then about 6 months later, Stu stepped down, and now another writer, Kevin McIlvaney, has taken over for Stu. And they have a committee of guys who do like the women's 100. So I used to do it all. I think they have 4 other people who do it now as kind of a group. But
Wow.
they did it last year, and it can't. They did it. They did it. Kevin is doing things a lot. He's putting his kind of print on PWI. Like he included a lot more women in the 500. He did a lot with the women's 100, where I always put a lot of things like if you're in WWE, that kind of gives you a step above a lot of people. But he took like I think like Natalia, who's like a cornerstone of WWE,
Hmm.
and I think she was down in like the 60s or 70s, and there were all these like indie girls with only 2 or 3 years experience ahead of her, and it's not the way I would have done it.
Hmm.
But they kind of changed up their formula a little bit. So, but that's new management.
And that could be because you have four other people trying to like pieces together, right?
Exactly.
Versus it was just you and like you knew the business. You know, like all the indies, like WWE, all of that. That says a lot about you with them having four people doing your one job.
Well, it's like imagine being in a band and you decide to leave the band and you're still friendly with the band, and then you go out and you catch your old band and somebody's replaced you, and you hear them play, and you can't help but sit there in the crowd and be like, "Oh, they're doing this wrong. Why are they doing this?"
Hmm.
But you have to be able to be like, "No, it's their band now. I stepped out of the band to let them do their thing." So
Yeah, completely unrelated. But my husband and I, we're on this like kick of older movies. And we just watched this one called The Rocker. Have you ever heard of it or seen it?
oh, it had didn't it have Dwight from
Yes,
The
yes, Dwight
Office?
Schrute.
I've seen a
Yes.
little bit of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it beginning to end.
Okay. Well, apparently it got rated really low, but I like stupid movies like that. And plus, I like Dwight Schrute. So I love the movie. And you just pretty much explained it with
There
that
you go.
whole like seeing the old band, and then he has to watch them perform and all that stuff. Anyway,
Yeah, that's
anyway,
my
I
life.
like the
That's my
movie.
life now, looking at PWI. So yeah, I can relate.
So it was 2019 that you retired from
Yeah,
PWI?
yeah.
Why does it seem not that wasn't too long ago? Why does it seem like it's been a while?
I think
No?
it's well. I mean, the pandemic kind of screws up everything. Like it's just the past year has been all kind of a blur for me. I mean, it just all of the events, especially in the wrestling world, all of the like cornerstone or benchmarks, like WrestleMania and all the pay-per-views, like they happen, but they're empty arenas, or the smaller shows didn't happen. And it just, I don't know, it feels like we've been in a time warp for a little while. At least that's what I think about it. But I've tried to stay busy with other stuff, so it doesn't seem like it was that long ago to me.
Yeah, but like, did you just felt, I think you said it already, but the reason why you left, you just felt like you needed to try something different?
Yeah, well, the other thing, a couple things. To be honest, there was well, I was dating again. I'd been married. I got divorced in 2015, and it was one of these things. You're being like in your mid 40s and like meeting people while you're dating. You're like, yeah, I traveled the country writing about pro wrestling. It's kind of
Hmm.
like, and the people you're dating are like, oh, I have kids, and like we need somebody who's going to be like a dependable, person in the house. I'm like, no, I hang out with men and women in their underpants play fighting. Like that's what I do. So there was part of me that's like, I just need to change things up. I need to, whatever. But the other thing is wrestling just, I hate to sound like the old fogey, like the Jim Cornette and everything, but I don't like the current style of wrestling. And I keep trying because I've loved wrestling since I was 10 and I can never completely pull out. I'm always still following it and watching stuff online. But I remember a couple of years ago watching WrestleMania, and I just remember thinking, man, I never want to watch another WrestleMania because it went 7 hours, including the pre-show or whatever. And one of the
Oh,
things
yeah,
I
that
did for the
was, ugh.
magazine, I used to write an article every year, WrestleMania, the real winners and losers. So for each match, I would say like the match, the result, Seth Rollins by pinfall in 1704 or whatever. So I'm timing everything,
Mhm.
then explain who. So the real winner, or the winner, was Seth Rollins. The real winner might be, because this is where a little bit of analysis comes in, the idea being that the magazine doesn't come out till like 6 weeks after WrestleMania. So just having who won or lost doesn't, I mean, everybody knows that already. So by putting a little bit of analysis in there, now you're, making it something that's interesting to read. So it's like, okay, if Seth Rollins won, then the real winner might be Dean Ambrose because now he's in better position for this title, and the real loser might have been Roman Reigns, whatever.
Mhm.
So going through the whole show, watching it, timing everything, taking down all the main moves and exchanges and false finishes, and then trying to analyze it and see like who is in better position, who's in worse position. It's like it's not fun at all. Any joy that I had with watching wrestling was gone. And at that point, I thought I can either be the bitter old guy with the magazine kind of crapping on everything, or I
Mhm.
can just kind of step aside and say, somebody else can take over.
Now, was it just that WrestleMania that turned you off of wrestling? Because I know like everybody didn't like the whole 7 hour thing. Like it is long. Like
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, especially when you have kids and you really want to watch it, but you're so dang tired and you just try to stay up. Like it's long. That's why last year with the pandemic, I was so glad that they cut it up into 2 days, which they're doing again this year. But like still, with the whole women's revolution thing, like are you into that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I did
Yeah.
the book with Pat LaPrade, Sisterhood of the Squared Circle, that came out in 2017. And for a while, women's wrestling was what really kept me involved with wrestling. I mean, I used to go out to the Shimmer shows all the time, and got to know all the girls there and everything. And what I really loved is that the women were, a lot of the guys were just doing high spots and not selling. And it's like, okay, they can flip, they can do the suicide dives, and that's all the matches were. And what I found was a lot of the women at that time, I don't know, maybe 2008, 9, 10, maybe a little bit later, 12, 13. The women weren't doing as many of the flips and dives, but they were doing such a better job of selling. They weren't doing everything they could do, but they were doing what they could do very well at the right time. And it was a much better pure wrestling. And I argued for a while with a lot of people that at one point, cheerleader Melissa, I thought was the best or pure wrestler in the United States. I
Hmm.
mean, like male or female, whatever, she was the cream of the crop. Um, and now I think the women have kind of followed in along the footsteps of the guys. It's a lot of flips and stuff that doesn't make any sense, and a lot of everybody coming out for their entrance, and they all have the exact, everyone's got to have their video game friendly choreographed routine. you know baby faces come out and they get the fans like, come on, cheer for me, which a baby face should never ever do. Like if you're exhorting the fans to cheer for you, then you're a
Mhm.
bad baby face. They should just do that, but it's become so common now that you can only complain about, this and this and this. And, it's just kind of like the whole industry decided that psychology was less important than spots. And I just kind of got left behind, I think.
Hmm. That makes sense. Um, I'm remembering now why I thought that you retired from PWI like so long ago. And it's because that you've written like a few books now. And it just
Yes.
feels like,
Yeah.
and like I forgot you wrote the Sisterhood of Squared Circle a long time ago. I guess not a
Well,
long time ago. You said 2017.
2017. Yeah.
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 But like you kept banging out books, it seemed like.
Yeah.
So you did that. And then now your latest one, The Wrestlers. Can you tell me a bit about both books?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Sisterhood of the Squared Circle was, I think we kind of came up with the idea in late 2014 or early 2015. It was in Shimmer in Chicago. And Pat LaPrade had come up to me. Pat is a writer out of Montreal.
Mhm.
And he had done the book Mad Dogs, Midgets, and Screwjobs with Bertrand de Bear. And it's a great book. It's a history of wrestling in Montreal, very well researched. And we were at Shimmer just hanging out. He and I we're drinking buddies. So we go to these shows, we hang out and whatever.
He's a really
Um,
nice guy.
well, you know Pat?
I've met him. Yes,
Okay, yeah.
we've conversed. Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
him that well though.
Then I can do my Pat LaPrade impression for you. That's how he speaks. Anyway, so and I go to the Cauliflower Alley Club reunion every year, and Pat normally goes, and we're kind of attached to the hip at that, and we hang out. But he came up to me at this one Shimmer show, and he says, "Hey, I've got an idea. I want to do a book on the history of women's pro wrestling, and I think that you'd be the perfect person to do it with. What do you think?" And I said, "Well, let me think about it." And I walked away, and I always, whenever I go to wrestling shows, I always carry a notebook with me. I always just take notes, just, ideas for columns, somebody who should be in the 500 or women's 100, whatever, cool spots or exchanges that I would write down just to kind of remember. And I started writing down, like, okay, if I were to do this, what would be the outline? And I put it all together. And well, I think cheerleader Melissa came over and said, "Oh, what are you working on?" I said, "I'm thinking." Pat LaPrade came over. He was thinking about collaborating on a book, and she looked at the outline. She's like, "That would be a freaking awesome book." I'm like, all right, I'm
Mhm.
sold. Let's do this. So we talked to ECW Press, and they gave us the green light, and we did it. And it came out right before WrestleMania that year. So I went down to Orlando, did all the shows leading up to it, and all the signings and everything. And it was an amazing experience. We end the book talking about how will women ever be able to headline WrestleMania, and we thought that we
Wow.
could as long as Ronda Rousey is involved with it. And 2 years later, there you go. Like it, I mean, it
Wow.
was perfect. So it came out right at the right time. It really kind of captured that wave, and because as we're writing it is when really like the women's Give Divas a Chance and the women's revolution is beginning to happen, and we're like, oh my god,
Mhm.
it's happening exactly as
Yeah.
our book's coming out. And one of the coolest things ever was at WrestleCon in Orlando. I remember this 12-year-old girl came over and so desperately wanted a copy of the book, and her mom said to me, she's like, when she heard that you guys were going to be here, she wanted to go and see you guys first. So we're at
Aw.
WrestleCon. There are hundreds of wrestlers. Right around the corner is like Trish Stratus and Lita. They were at the table like adjacent to us. There's people everywhere. But this girl she ended up doing her book report on our book. And she made
Aw.
like a big poster board thing of Sisterhood of the Squared Circle and took a picture and sent it to me and Pat. And it's the coolest thing in the world to think that like a book that we wrote about wrestling history meant so much to this like 12-year-old girl who's going through a time in
Yeah.
her life, a stage in her life where you can either be very positive and uplifting and encouraging, or she could take on other messages from the world and go the other way. So
Yeah.
yeah, it felt a little bit more than just a wrestling history book. So that made me very happy.
Aw.
And
And
then
The wrestlers?
Yeah, I had the idea of doing a book on the wrestlers. Kind of, I don't like to use this as a catchphrase because it was David Starr's catchphrase, but in short, like your favorite wrestlers, like the guys that current wrestlers go back at and watch and say, "Wow, that guy was good. He was smooth," and why. And talking to as many wrestlers as I could about some of these people and like why was this person so good, why was Ray Stevens so good, or Nick Bockwinkel, or really through the 19 well we have Strangler Lewis in there from the 20s up until the current modern day. So yeah, and a lot of guys aren't people who got pushed, like Brad Armstrong or a William Regal or Fit Finley, people like that, but they were the guys who anytime they had a match, you knew that the guys in the back were kind of glued to the monitor to see what they would do.
I love it. So when did that one come out?
That one actually comes out like this week.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the timing is perfect. It comes out officially like April 20th or so. But the publisher, because with COVID and the printers and everything's kind of up in the air. They got back to me and said that they just got issues in last week and they're being sent out to me. So by the time this airs, I'll probably have copies here, and it'll probably be available on Amazon any day now.
Amazing. So is there like an Amazon address, or just search for...
Just look for the wrestlers on Amazon, or you can go to, if you're in Canada too, ECW Press. Their website, you can order direct from that. They're based in Toronto, which is why I mentioned that.
Okay.
But yeah, so you can go to ecwpress.com or .ca or Amazon, and you can pretty much find it anywhere.
Amazing. And can people also still order the Sisterhood of the Squared Circle?
Oh yeah, I would be very happy if they did.
Same thing, yes, Amazon?
Yeah, that is available everywhere. Yep.
Awesome. And then you also wrote a non-wrestling book.
Yeah. Again, the idea of wanting to try something different, after writing about wrestling for so long. So I tried writing, it can be called a horror book, but it's not really terrifying. The idea is a little bit creepy, I guess. But the idea is that it's called The Thing in the River, and came out in about November of last year. So it's been out a few months.
Am I going to get nightmares from this?
You might. Oh, no, only if you're marked. Here's what I mean by that. The concept of this is that there is, or may not be, it may be just one person who's a little bit nutty, but he believes that there's a thing that's in the Niagara River, not really an animal, but some kind of entity that's in the Niagara River that is responsible for everyone who's committed suicide in the river. Basically, it reaches out to them mentally, telepathically through dreams, and convinces the people who jump over Niagara Falls, who drown themselves in the river, and throughout human history. And this guy had a brush with this thing as a kid, and a kayaking accident. He survived, but it took his sister. And all his life, he's been having nightmares, literally every night, compelling him to go to the river. And it's all about his kind of alcoholism, and which he's developed as almost a coping mechanism. Until he finds out this other woman has just seen the thing, and he believes that she's going to begin having the nightmares too. So he needs to kind of pull himself out of his funk and try to help her before she becomes the next victim. So
wow,
it's this idea of kind of a monster in a relationship. And we were talking a little bit about this before we started taping. It's about somebody kind of pulling themselves out of their own funk and just really kind of stepping up and trying to become human again.
Wow.
And so it can be looked at as a story about depression, or it can be looked at about maybe, I don't know, a variety of things like that. But it's all framed with the idea of kind of like a traditional horror story based on the Niagara River.
That's amazing. I'm not for horror anything, but I'm into that. I'm into your book.
Gladly send you a copy.
Will you actually?
I actually will. Absolutely.
Ooh, got hooked up.
There you go. See, this is the thing. Sometimes when you're a famous podcaster, you get free stuff.
Oh, famous. Come on.
Come
on. You also mentioned the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Yes.
You guys meet up in Vegas every year, and it's usually, I think, around April-ish. So
Yeah, it
April?
has been. Yep, traditionally everything's a little bit screwed up with COVID now.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, the Cauliflower Alley Club, it dates back, I forget exactly when. Well, we just had the 50th reunion a couple years ago, so about 52, 53 years.
Mhm.
But it was this benevolent association for pro wrestlers and stuntmen and some actors and a couple boxers. And it's become really just pro wrestling now. Occasionally we'll get some actors who pop in and things like that and stuntmen, but mostly just wrestlers. And the idea is to raise money for, a lot of workers for so long never had any kind of health insurance or benefits, and they've been bumping for 30 or 40 years and their bodies are just broken. Um,
Mm.
so people like Kamala, Brickhouse Brown, a few others. Traditionally, they don't. For the longest time, the CAC didn't really advertise who the money went to because they wanted the people to keep their pride. A lot of wrestlers don't want to people to know that they're kind of down and broken and things have happened.
Right. Yeah.
But things have opened up a little bit now where a lot of wrestlers are talking about receiving money from CAC and how it's helped them with chemotherapy and bills and avoid foreclosure and things like that. So
Oh, wow.
it's really a great organization and it's a great time. You get together for a week in Vegas every year. We all get to hang out and see each other,
Hmm.
and then have the fundraiser, the big dinner, the banquet. So it's nice.
Nice.
I'll tell you
Are
this. One of the coolest things that I've been able to do at CAC, two things quickly. One is, and we would do this every year. A group of us would get together, some of the writers, Pat LaPrade and I, and Greg Oliver from Slam Wrestling, and some others. There was a back sports bar at the Gold Coast Hotel and Casino where we had the event. We'd get in back, and one table, it would be me and Pat, and Greg would normally be there, and Pat Patterson and Jerry Briscoe. And we would just hang out, and Patterson would smoke, and we'd sit there, and other people would float in, and Patterson and Briscoe would just tell stories. And then in comes Paul Orndorff, and he begins telling stories. And in comes Mean Gene Okerlund, and in comes B. Brian Blair of the Killer Bees. And people just kind of float in, and like J.J. Dillon comes in and starts talking about the Four Horsemen. And it's not like a fan fest. It's not anything like that. It's just a matter of people who love the business who are all there and are having a good time and kind of ball busting and everything. And, you
Mhm.
know, but being able to, and Jim Ross, like he would always be there. So like just being able to go and hang out with those guys, for a few hours and stuff and, whatever, every year it's a blast. I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, and it is open to fans. I mean, you may not necessarily be able to kind of, get a seat right next to Jim Ross if you're a fan off the street, but you might, if you play your cards right and you don't completely mark out, you can. But it's just a great way for people to kind of visit and just keep these old stories alive.
Give
And
us a
then
story.
the other one, well, this is, I don't want to tell them their story. Well, no, I will tell one of their stories. This is one, Pat Patterson told this, and I think he said it in a few other places. And this may be, I don't know how, what are you PG rated? Are you R rated? What's your
Oh,
rating?
you be yourself.
Okay. Basically, Pat Patterson he would be the first one to make gay jokes about himself. And, so one year during the reunion, I think it was Terry Funk was trying to read an award and said, Pat Patterson, I can't read this. Give me your cheaters. And Patterson stands up to give him his glasses and goes, I'll give them to you, but they're a little cockeyed, just
Oh my God.
like, which is Pat. That's just how he was. But Pat told a story where he was in the AWA and he was traveling with, I think, the High Flyers, Jim Brunzell and Greg Gagne. And somebody had talked to Brunzell and Gagne and really kind of just put it in their ear that, Pat Patterson's gay and he's going to be rooming with you. Are you guys worried about that? Like, well, no, why would we be worried? Like, oh, he's really aggressively gay. Like, watch out. And Pat knew that they were doing this. So Pat one night just stood over Jim Brunzell as he was sleeping. And I
Oh
forget
my
if he said he was
gosh.
naked or not. But he just waited until Brunzell opened his eyes, and Pat's just standing like looming over him. He's like, good morning, Angel Eyes. Just
Oh
to,
my
like, screw with
gosh.
them, right? And Brenzel didn't want to like be rude. He's like, good morning to you. So they would just tell these dumb little stories, and it's just fun, stories about well, I forget who it was. Somebody, Mad Dog Vachon, opening up a door in a flying airplane somewhere in Minneapolis and
Oh my
almost getting
gosh.
sucked out and crazy stuff like that.
Holy
And then
cow.
one other year at CAC, it was the year that Io Shirai and Mayu Awatani and Kairi Hojo, who became Kairi Sane in WWE, they'd
Mm.
come in to work Lucha Underground, and they were cheerleader Melissa was kind of their handler, for lack of a better term. And the
Mhm.
event ends, and it's like midnight, and it turns out the Japanese girls and I forget his name, Rossi Ogawa, were flying back to Japan the next morning at 6 a.m. I was flying back to Buffalo at 6 a.m. And the girls didn't want to like go to bed. Might as well just stay up all night at this point. It's like 11 and, we're in the flights in 7 hours. So Melissa is talking to me and she's like, I need to do something to like entertain these girls for like, 7 hours. She's like, what do I was thinking about taking them to a high roller, the big kind of Ferris wheel thing that was in Vegas.
Okay.
She's like, do you want to come? I'm like, yeah, okay. So we go to the high roller and it's, it kills about an hour and we still have all this time. And we're walking up and down the strip trying to find something that these three Japanese girls who speak very little English will like. They did pop when I pointed out Caesar's Palace and I said, like, The Hangover, and they all saw it. And then Mayu was pointing at me and she's like, you. She thought I looked like Zach Galifianakis.
Oh.
Like, yeah, the Hangover, me. That's right. The beard and the fat guy. Right. Okay. um, but as we're walking, Io comes up. Well, actually, I don't want to say which one comes up. One of the three comes up to me and says, how you say strip club? Like, whoa. And
You just said EO.
No, it wasn't Io because Io said the second part.
Oh, okay.
One of them came up and said it. And then they all kind of, Melissa kind of laughs and she goes, like, men or women? And they all kind of step to the side and huddle up, and then they come back, and this is where Io. And Io, like, having taken the consensus from the huddle, she's like, women. Like, all right, here we go. And we ended up going to the Godfather's Club, and like the girls like they loved it. It was funny. It was one of the most surreal things. I'm sitting there in the Cheetah Club, and like with three like legendary Japanese pro wrestlers and cheerleader Melissa and hanging out. And there's, the Godfather wasn't there that night, but the staff is giving them all 8x10s and they're all bowing and there's naked women everywhere. Man, Cauliflower Alley Club is the best. This is a great time.
That's great.
Yeah,
oh
it was a good night out.
Well, I mean, Vegas. Okay, so every year, would you say you do something crazy just because it is in Vegas?
No, not. I mean, I've been to Vegas so many times now where there's not a lot of crazy stuff left to do anymore. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to do something wild and crazy because they were young and coming to America for the first time. So
yeah.
And
I mean,
who am I to say no?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't blame them. They see Vegas in movies and stuff, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
Hell yeah, do it up.
Yeah.
Let's take a break and let's play a little game.
Okay.
This is called This or That. Very simple. You're just going to choose either or. Okay. Would you rather be on a reality TV show or on a game show?
Game show.
And what game show?
Ooh. Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah,
that's a good. That's a good.
I'd go Jeopardy, but I feel like I'd lock up, and even if I can watch Jeopardy at home and know a lot of the answers watching, but I feel like I'd get stage fright and I would just Cliff Clavin it and bomb out. But I think I could figure out enough with Wheel of Fortune where I could, not humiliate myself.
Dang, you're a smart cookie, eh? Jeopardy? I wouldn't even touch Jeopardy.
Yeah, but if you do well on that, then you're forever known as the one who did well on Jeopardy. If you're gonna fail.
True. Yes. Okay, I don't know if you're into junk food or not. I'm writing these questions down. I'm like, I can't remember if I ever see you eat junk food. Anyway, the question is, would you give up junk food or give up beer?
Oh, I'd give up junk food in a heartbeat.
That one was too easy. Eh?
Yeah. I do enjoy having a few beers.
Asking questions or answering questions?
It's a good one. Asking questions, because I think that most people inherently, I find people interesting, and I think that if you ask the right questions of almost anyone, you can learn something.
Yes.
So I always like to learn something and just, hear something different. And I can answer questions and just give the same answers all the time, or I can ask questions and I can learn something from everyone I talk to.
See, Dan, this is why I told you before we started recording that you can just take over my podcast if you like.
You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you. Okay, a fire pit or fireplace?
Ooh, this is good because I do both. I'm going to go fireplace. It's a controversial pick, I think, but no.
Controversial.
I think it's controversial. Like fire, get Twitter will fire right up over this. Dan Murphy prefers fireplaces to fireplace. No, I bought a new house back last spring. And one of the first things I did was get the chimney all rebuilt and swept out and invested between the new flue and everything else, probably $1,500 just so I could have, fires in the fireplace during the winter.
Yeah.
And I tried to have one, as often as I could. So I kind of like being able to sit by a fireplace in the wintertime.
Nice. Now, do you need real wood or is it the gas fireplace?
No, real wood. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Wood
nice.
burning. Yeah, that's fantastic.
See, the only thing I would choose fireplace and I have one, but like mosquitoes hate me. No, I'm sorry. They love me. So
Gotcha.
anytime I'm outside and I would love to be outside with the fire pit, but the freaking mosquitoes just are a-holes.
And the other thing with the fire pit is no matter where you sit, the smoke always blows in your face. Like you can move in any direction and the smoke will follow you.
That's true. Yes. Last one, earthquake or tornado?
Tornado. Earthquake has, there was a movie I saw as a kid. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was even a TV show, but it was like one of those 70s depictions of earthquakes. And it was really bad special effects and everything, but it's where like the ground just opens up and people fall into this chasm and it traumatized me. Like the idea that the ground would just open and everybody falls in, which isn't at all what an earthquake's really like, but still, a tornado, you can kind of duck and cover and stay in doorways or something and you'll be fine.
But what if you get like swept up into it?
Then you can fly, which is like awesome for a little bit, right?
Oh my God. Oh, I don't know what I'd choose. When I was living in California, you'd feel like little earthquakes here and there. So, but then now I'm thinking about the freaking ground opening up.
Yeah, I remember because the ground open. Maybe it was even like an old Superman movie or something, like the first one from 78 or 81, whatever. But like people sliding down a road into this chasm and dropping in, and you just see like boiling magma down there. And yeah, which isn't at all what earthquakes are, but in my head, that's what they are.
You used to have a one beer with series.
Yes, I did.
And I believe, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I was your first guest. Yes?
I believe you were no, I think you were the first. I think you were the first guest. Yeah. Yeah.
How long did you do that for? So your thing was you'd have a beer, just like the title.
Yeah.
You'd have a beer with a guest and just catch up.
Yeah, I thought it was a really neat thing. I thought the idea being the interview, whatever it is, would go no set amount of time, but just the amount of time it takes to have a beer with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
and two people just sitting down and having a beer and putting the camera on and not really editing it, just letting it be. This is two people having a beer together. And the idea
Yeah.
was, and I did maybe 10 episodes or so. And I thought it was cool because I just wanted to talk to people I found to be interesting, whether they were in wrestling or not, or from whatever walk of life. And it actually did kind of really get over. The wrestling ones did. The non-wrestling ones, not as much. But then what really I kind of noticed was it was the wrestling ones with like attractive women. And I'm like, people just want to see, like, they don't care about the gimmick. they just want to see the pretty girls on YouTube. And I'm like, it's not really, it's not really getting over the way I thought. But yeah, so I did it for a little bit and then just kind of let it fade out. But it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed doing the one with you up in Toronto there.
Yes. I mean, let me tell you, I'm terrible with talking, even though like now I have a podcast, but like the beer helped. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's
a good idea. Okay, let's shoot to another game. This one's called Rapid Fire. I'm going to say a simple move, and then the first wrestler that pops into your head, you just say out. All right, the first one is drop kick.
Jim Brunzell.
Now, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear a lot of old school wrestlers here, yeah?
No, not necessarily, but I'll think of the ones who I think do it the best. I mean, maybe you can go with Rocky Johnson or whatever, but Jim Brunzell is the guy that comes to my mind.
Okay, super kick.
Chris Adams. So yeah, I guess we are doing
choke slam.
Well, first one that came to mind was Kane. So
good. There you go. Yeah. DDT.
Jake Roberts.
Mm-hmm. Now I had neck breaker on here,
Honky Tonk,
but shit.
Well, you could do Rick Rude. You know, it depends if you prefer the Rude Awakening, the Shake, Rattle, and Roll.
Okay, so I was just going to explain how I took neck breaker out because everyone had a tough time thinking of a wrestler because it's used a lot and, it's not looked at as a big move anymore.
Yeah, it's not a finisher.
So of course, when I'm trying to explain it, saying, well, I'm not going to say neck breaker today. And then you just, boom, you just give me two wrestlers right off the bat. See, this is why...
gone with, like, the Russian assassin with the guillotine neck breaker. There's a few that I had like on standby, but I'll just go with the top two.
Oh, there you go. Let's see. Moonsault.
Great Muda. Still the best, I think. I mean, it just so fluid when he was in his prime and so beautiful. And he was the one who popularized it.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was the one who started doing it in, I think he was doing it. I think he could do it in World Class, if I'm not mistaken, but he was a heel and he was brought in on like a talent swap with Japan. And Gary Hart told him, no, we can't have you doing that move. He might have done it at like a couple house shows or whatever, but he's basically, Gary Hart, who was his manager, was saying, that's a babyface move and we cannot have a heel do that move. Like, save the high flying for the Von Erichs, put them over. You stick with thrust kicks and strikes. You can do the handspring elbow, but not the moonsault. But it wasn't until he got to WCW in '89, the end. Well, Jim Crockett Promotions technically, but that's when he started doing it. And sure enough, he did get over as a baby face, but before they officially switched him, he left. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he was convinced that it was going to kill his career if he became a good guy in America. So when the fans were really beginning to kind of clamor for him and he had that kind of that fan swell of support, he ended up kind of leaving, going back to Japan. He didn't want to be a babyface, at least according to the Gary Hart book.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Like, he's good as a baby. Like, he just didn't want to. Well, I guess you wouldn't know, but like he didn't want to be a face.
He was convinced by management, and particularly Gary Hart, now Gary Hart was also managing him. And you could say Gary Hart was just being greedy because if Muta was a babyface, then he wouldn't need a manager. And Gary Hart was such a heel that you would never have a babyface with Gary Hart. But Gary Hart was in his ear and told him, it's a bad move for business. You're really good as the villain. You don't want to do that. And he agreed.
Oh,
and it didn't
I
help
see.
that Jim Crockett Promotions, they did Starrcade 1990, I think. They did this idea of an Iron Man round robin tournament, 4 singles guys and 4 tag teams. And Muta jobbed up 4 times in one night. And up until that point, he had been super protected. But he jobbed to Sting, Ric Flair, and Lex Luger all in one night. And I guess Jim Crockett Promotions wanted to make that the beginning of his babyface turn, where he kind of got screwed a couple times. He felt like his management was bad. And instead, he just went back to Japan.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Powerbomb.
Vader.
Nice. Yes. And then my last one that I was going to switch out for the neck breaker, German suplex.
I guess because it's the first one I thought of. I want to come up with something better. But no, I'll just do Chris Benoit. He's the first one that came to mind with that.
Nice.
But I just love his explosiveness and his hips, basically. Like, he just popped people with such power and threw the hips up and bridged so well. And he really did such a great job with that move.
And he snapped with it too.
Yeah, exactly. And that all comes from the hips, hips and knees. So yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the Dan Murphy now.
Yeah.
You're working out, but not like normal working out. You're like doing crazy ass training.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, to some. Yeah, it is.
We're talking about like kegs. We're talking about like what is it? The pulls that you're doing, the dog sled things.
Oh yeah.
What is that?
The sled pulls. Car lift. Which isn't a car, but it's called the car lift. Atlas stones. Basically, a couple years ago, I began dating this girl who I live with now, and I love her very much. But she and her family do Scottish festivals, and they have a tent. These Scottish kind of heritage festivals. If you're part of a Scottish clan, an old family, that dates back, the clans have little tents where they have some history and everything else, so people can go to the festival. You can see, oh, that's my family name. Like, I can learn a little bit about what our tartan is and where my family came from and whatever.
Wow.
So she would do this with her parents, and I'm second generation Irish on both sides, but I love Ireland and everything kind of Celtic. It resonates with me because it's close to my background. So I would go to these festivals with her and kind of help out her and her family in the tent. But they also had the Highland Games athletes who were over on the side. And the Highland Games are 9 events at these, typically 9 events, where it's all throwing. It's just basically throwing heavy stuff. Stone throws, weight over bar. The most famous thing is the caber toss, where they pick up it looks like a telephone pole, and you run with it and you kind of chuck it up in the air and try to flip it. Yeah. And I started hanging out with those guys, and they talked me into it, and I started doing the Highland Games. So yeah,
that's so freaking cool.
Right. So I'm out in a kilt every once in a while doing. And again, COVID kind of wreaked havoc with the schedule last year.
Yeah.
So I'm training with a group of the guys, and to train for the games, we do a lot of kind of strongman, unorthodox style training. Real heavyweight, real explosive movements, the kind of stuff that when you're in your mid 40s, you probably shouldn't be doing, like, hundreds of pounds and just kind of lift with your back and, but it's pretty awesome. And it's difficult, but it's cool to kind of just challenge yourself all the time and be able to do something and then be like, yeah, I did that. So
yes,
it's been fun.
Like, I remember the first year you did it. I want to remember a video you posted. Was it like shot put or something, or like something you spun around and threw something with that ball, the iron ball?
There's a few that it could be because they're all kind of like that. There's 2 stone throws that are like shot put. There's two where you spin around holding a weight on a chain, a heavy weight for distance and light weight for distance.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the hammer throw, and that's like a 3 foot long shaft with the hammer head on it, and you spin around 3 times and you chuck that over your shoulder. So yeah, it could have been any one of those.
I was just like, whoa, like just going into that. And you, like you said, you're older. So going into this, I call you strongman now. Going into this, I'm just like, wow, good for you. Like that stuff is cool as hell. And I'm sure challenging.
Yeah, it definitely challenging. Yeah, like it, but you know, it's just a weird thing. I mean, I wrestled in high school. I played rugby in college, and then I hung around with wrestlers. And even I did wrestle for a little bit when I was booking Empire State Wrestling in Buffalo. I kind of decided they'd asked me to book. I was a writer. I'm in the area. It's my local promotion, and they asked me to kind of come in and book the shows, which I did for a couple of years. And I decided that I wanted to train with the guys. And the idea being, number one, I'm not going to ask anyone to take a bump that I don't know how to take. And number two, if I'm going to write about wrestling, I should really learn how it's done. So I trained a lot. And we had Beth Phoenix at that time before she went to OVW. So she was kind of one of the trainers. And then people you would know from Ontario, like Cody Diener, Cody Steele, Danger Boy Derek Wild came down a few times, the All-Nighters. But anyway, so I put on a mask and I just did job duty. Whenever we needed a body to get beat, I was Grappler X, just generic job guy. So like I've always kind of done physical stuff. But once I got out of wrestling and not being in the locker room anymore, hanging out with the Highland Games athletes kind of filled that void, because it's the exact same thing. It's the same kind of ball busting, and it feels like hanging out with the boys. And you find so many wrestlers and people like yourself, probably, I'm sure that you went through this after you got out of the business, just missing that atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard, especially if you've done it for a long time. It's hard to replace. And then I just kind of found this group of guys who we get together and wear kilts and throw heavy stuff and drink a lot of beer. So it worked out really well.
I love it. I love it. So you've done, is it 2 of the Highland Games, or is it just the one?
I've done, I think 4 events so far.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Last year was abbreviated. I'm hoping to do 5 this season. I mean, I know there are some guys who do it every week and they do stuff year round. I just kind of do it during the summer and want to try to get 5 games out.
Oh, wow. Maybe I'm not paying attention. I'm a terrible friend, but I had no clue it was like, it could be a weekly thing. I just thought it was like a yearly thing where like everybody gets together and you just like train hard for just this one full day of events, but it's not that.
Yeah, some are bigger events and some are smaller and everything. But yeah, so you do train for the big ones, but there are a few throughout the year. And again, they're normally with the Celtic festivals, the Scottish festivals and things like that. And a lot of those still haven't reopened with COVID. So sometimes they're doing standalone games if, the rules are such that we can all still gather and, so everything's kind of up in the air, but the plan is to try to get 5. And again, it's 9 events and it's grueling because it's in the summer and all of us are, I mean, people are all different nationalities who do this, but a lot of us are Irish or Scottish and we don't do well in the sun. So we sunburn all.
Oh no. Oh no.
Because you stand out in these fields for, like wide open fields so you can throw heavy stuff far with no shade. And then, you're out in the sun in August for like 9 hours. And then,
oh no.
And we're all in our 40s and 50s and drinking beer and fat to begin with. So it's a recipe for disaster.
So what's your favorite game?
My favorite with the Highland Games, I love the hammer throws.
Hammer throw.
Yeah. What I found, and this is kind of neat with both the strongman and doing the Highland Games, I'm not the strongest guy at all. But there's certain things that I can do that some guys who are a lot stronger than me can't do. And certain things they can do that I can't do. It's just kind of all technique and where your center of gravity is and everything else. And one of the really cool things about this is you can have a group of 5 or 6 guys and be like, okay, this guy may be better than everyone else at this one event, but this guy is better at this, and this guy's better at this, and I'm better at this. It all kind of balances out. So I find that I can do hammer pretty well. And when we're doing the strongman, we were pulling a sled with a harness on a couple weeks ago, and we had 500 pounds on it. And some of the guys one of the guys who's a big muscle man, looks like a pro wrestler. He was the first guy, and he was bouncing around, and he said this. He looked like Stuart from Mad TV. You remember Stuart? Like when like his mom held him on like a leash. Yeah.
Don't.
And he was like bouncing. I can't. Like that's what he looked like to try to get started, because he's just bouncing around. He's not moving the sled. Until,
oh my gosh.
And he eventually got it moving. And once you get it moving, it's a little bit easier. And he can kick my tail in all the events and most of the lifting. But then I did the 500-pound sled, and I just had, I guess, a lower center of gravity. I got down, and I kind of made it look easy. And that's cool. Like it's cool that, different body types, different strengths, everybody can do something a little bit different. So it keeps it fun, I guess.
What about what's the big giant ball the one that you train for with the keg? What's that? The ball thing. What's that called again?
Atlas stone.
The Atlas stone. That's it.
Yeah.
Do you hate the Atlas stone?
I did. But I've come to like it a little bit more. Although it's easy to say I like it right now, the day I have to go and do it and I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I don't like this at all. But it's just a big round cement stone. The one I do, I normally do the 175-pound one. You just kind of squat down, you get your fingers underneath it. It's tough because it's smooth. There's nothing to really grip, but you have to kind of pop it up to get your fingers underneath it, hoist it up to your knees, and then roll it back kind of into your lap. Have your arms underneath it, and then stand up and set it on a shelf. So it's all kind of matter of just getting that initial pop and then rolling this big ball up your body so you can, put it up like head level.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then it's different.
Sometimes I remember trying to do it and then feeling like a sharp pain in like my high abs, like a stomach cramp. And then just like, okay, I can either just step away from this thing and think this is stupid, I shouldn't be trying to lift up this ball, or just stand up, take a deep breath, like wait for the pain to go away, give it a 3-5 seconds, and then go down for another attempt. And then you do it. And then you just feel so amazing that you're able to actually make it work,
Damn.
And then you have to do it 2 or 3 more times, but still it always feels good once you get it moving.
Damn. You're crazy. I love it.
It's bad form for a podcast host to call the guest crazy. You should know that.
Oh, sorry. You're crazy as shit. Holy cow.
We're deleting this episode. You're a madman.
Okay, so before we end the show, I would love to play my very last game, my third game, Survivor Series game. You're going to choose 4 other wrestlers that you'd have on Grappler X's squad.
Whoa. All right. That's interesting. And we don't know who our opponents are then, right? I can't.
No. We just
matchups. Oh.
No. No, you can't use your PWI skills for this.
Right. They're the real winners and losers. Let's get the right matchups here. And is this of all time, or is this current guys, or
of all time that you think would mesh really well with Grappler X?
Well, I have to start with the walking weapon, Josh Alexander.
Oh, damn. Oh, damn. Look out.
We need a team captain. Come on. I think you'd be the right guy for it. So that's one right there.
I love it.
On top, and are we doing 5-man teams? Or
you're the 5th. Well, you're the 5th. Right. Yeah.
So we got 2 right there. All right.
Yeah.
Then just to round things out, Andre the Giant.
Wow. Yes.
Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle.
Oh my gosh. You're just
because
like...
I think that they work with the style of Grappler X better than anyone else. I think Grappler X fits right with those 4 guys.
You know what? I could tell you my husband approves of this team.
There we go.
Yeah,
I mean, who's going to stop us?
I love it so much.
Perfect.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for telling me, like, your PWI story blew me away. I love hearing about your strongman stuff, your Highland Games stuff. I can't wait to see more. Now, are you able to record? Is this something like your girlfriend's able to record that you can post on Facebook and stuff?
The Highland Games and everything?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, one of the guys, we kind of tease him a little bit. He's put together like, he's a monster. But he shows up and he brings all of his own lighting and everything else and his selfie stick, so when he's lifting and throwing, he's got the perfect pictures. But
wow.
it's like, okay, Captain Instagram. All right, fine. But no, he takes pictures of our stuff too. So yeah, I can definitely post and send some stuff as the game.
Because I think it's so cool. That's freaking dope.
You gotta you gotta have to, you reinvent yourself, try something new. And if you don't, then you're just, you're dying.
Exactly why I have this podcast.
and that's what I wanted to say before you kind of sign off and give me the boot. I'm so happy. No, really, I'm so happy that you're doing this, because I meant what I said at the, years ago when we met in Michigan and at the beginning of the show. I think that you had such a head for the wrestling business and you had such a great run in Ring of Honor. And it's a shame that it wasn't nationally televised at that time. And then you got out of it, but you're doing something else and you're not just fading away. You're still reinventing yourself and you're still doing other things. And some of the posts that you've been posting lately, it looks like you're in a very happy, good place. And I'm so happy to see that. And I'm so happy that you're doing this podcast and still staying active in the wrestling world and just in public in general.
Thanks so much, Dan. That it truly means the world to me. Just listening to that. You miss the business. I don't want to say like, I'm trying to stay relevant. I love the business that much that I want to keep talking about it. The couple years, I think it was like 6 years that I took a break from. Those 6 years that I didn't have wrestling, it was empty. Like I did other things that did make me happy, but obviously in the end, wrestling came back to me. So it was that point where I knew that, okay, wrestling's never going to leave me again. Like that can't happen because it makes me happy. So thank you so much. That truly means, it means a lot. Like you don't understand. You're going to make me cry.
That was the plan. That's what every guest should do, is make the host cry. That's always the perfect way to end it.
Do you have socials that everyone can find you on?
I don't really do Twitter. I don't really do Instagram. I'm on Facebook. That's about it. And my books, if you're interested, the Sisterhood of the Squared Circle, The Wrestler's Wrestler, which comes out this week, and The Thing in the River, they're all available on Amazon as well. So, if your fans or your listeners are wrestling fans, please check those out. Or if you just want to read a scary story about a potential monster and a person overcoming depression, you can check out The Thing in the River.
And just a reminder, by the time this episode airs, the Wrestlers will be available. So Go ahead, get to Amazon and order your copy. Dan, thanks again so much. Loved chatting with you. Man, I hope this border thing gets like resolved where people can start crossing again. Because, well, I don't get to cross much, but hopefully, maybe you and Tara can come on over to Toronto. I'd love to have you guys over just to catch up and to meet her, just because I know you're a good person and you totally deserve her. So I hope one day to actually
we have to, because I got to get up there with Josh and start training for the Survivor Series. We got to work on our hot tags. We got spots we got to work out.
There we go.
Andre's not going to listen to us. We got to figure it out ourselves.
You're wild. Dan, thanks again. Until then, guys, see you next Tuesday.